Carol Martinez stood at the Family Feud podium, holding something that didn't belong on a game show stage. A worn leather notebook, its pages yellowed from years of handling, edges frayed from being opened thousands of times. Inside, written in fading blue ink, were the answers of a man who had been dead for exactly 1 year and 3 days. When Steve Harvey asked the first question, Carol didn't buzz in with her own answer. She opened the notebook with trembling hands and read what her husband Robert had written 5 years earlier. During one of the 1,847 episodes of Family Feud they'd watched together in their 42-year marriage. The answer was on the board. Number 3. By the third round, Steve Harvey noticed something impossible was happening. This 67-year-old widow wasn't guessing. She was reading. And somehow a dead man's predictions from 5 years ago were appearing on the board with stunning accuracy. When Steve finally asked where the answers were coming from, and Carol held up the notebook with tears streaming down her face, the entire studio fell silent, because everyone suddenly understood they weren't watching a game show. They were witnessing a love story that had transcended death itself. The 42-year ritual. Robert and Carol Martinez met in 1975 at a bus stop in San Antonio, Texas. They married 6 months later. Nothing extraordinary about their life. Robert worked construction. Carol worked at a bank, 2 kids, a modest 3-bedroom house. Regular working-class family, building a regular working-class life. Except for one thing, every single evening at 7 p.m. for 42 years, Robert and Carol Martinez watched Family Feud together. It started in 1976 when the original show premiered with Richard Dawson. Robert loved it immediately. It became their routine: dinner at 6:30, dishes by 6:50, settled on the couch by 6:55, ready when the theme music started at 7 o'clock. Through every host change, through every format evolution, through Richard Dawson, Ray Combs, Louis Anderson, Richard Karn, John O'Hurley, and finally Steve Harvey in 2010, Robert and Carol watched together 42 years, never missed an episode. But Robert didn't just watch. He competed against the television, against himself. In 1982, Robert started keeping a notebook. Every episode, he'd write down the questions and his answers before the contestants revealed theirs. Then he'd score himself. 1 point for every answer that appeared on the board. He tracked his scores meticulously. By 2010, he'd filled 7 notebooks. Carol thought it was adorable. Their kids thought it was obsessive. Robert thought it was important. When I get on that show, he'd tell Carol, I'm going to be ready. It became their language. When life got hard, when money was tight, when Robert's back injury made working painful, when Carol's father died, when their son went through divorce, they had Family Feud. Every night at 7 p.m., the world stopped, and they had 45 minutes of consistency. In 2016, Robert finally did it. He applied to Family Feud. At 68 years old, with 4 decades of dedicated watching, Robert Martinez was accepted. They scheduled the taping for April 2017. Robert was ecstatic. He studied his old notebooks. He practiced buzzer speed. This was it. His moment. 42 years of preparation was finally going to pay off. Then, in January 2017, Robert started feeling tired. By February, the doctors found cancer. Pancreatic, stage 4, terminal. Robert Martinez died on March 15, 2017, exactly 3 weeks before his scheduled Family Feud taping date. The promise made in a hospital room. Carol sat beside Robert's hospital bed on March 12, 2017. These were their last days together. Robert was fading, but his mind was still sharp. I'm not going to make it to the show, Robert said quietly. Carol couldn't speak. She just held his hand. But you have to go, Robert continued. Call them, tell them I can't make it. But you'll go with the family. You have to go. Robert, I can't. Carol. His voice was firm despite his weakness. We've watched that show together for 42 years. Every single night. You think I'm going to miss our chance just because I died? You're going. Through her tears, Carol smiled. Only Robert would be annoyed about missing Family Feud while dying of cancer. And take my notebooks, Robert added. Take the one from 2012 when Steve Harvey started hosting. My best predictions are in there. When you're up there playing, open the notebook and read my answers. I'll be playing with you. Promise me, he said, eyes intense. Promise me you'll go. Promise me you'll take the notebook. Promise me we'll play together one more time. Carol couldn't say no to him, not in 42 years of marriage, and not now. I promise. Robert died 3 days later on March 15th at 7:03 p.m., just 3 minutes after Family Feud would have ended that day. 6 weeks later, Carol called the Family Feud producers. She explained everything. The 42 years, the notebooks, the deathbed promise. They were moved. They made an exception. Carol assembled her team, her sister Linda, her daughter Maria, her son David, and her grandson Robert Jr., age 19, 4 family members, and one ghost with a notebook full of answers. The game show that became a seance. June 15, 2017. The Martinez family stood at their Family Feud podium. Carol held the notebook wrapped in silk cloth like a sacred object. Steve Harvey did his usual introductions. When he got to Carol, something about her caught his attention, the way she held that notebook like a lifeline. Carol Martinez from San Antonio. And Carol, what do we have here? He gestured to the notebook. This belonged to my husband Robert, Carol said steadily. He passed away 3 months ago. He watched your show for years. He wanted to be here today. The audience made sympathetic sounds. Steve's expression softened. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know he would have loved to be here. He is here, Carol said simply. In this notebook. Steve nodded, thinking it was a sentimental keepsake. The game started. First question. Name something people do to relax after a hard day at work. The opposing Thompson family had control, solid answers. Watch TV, number 1. Take a shower, number 3. Have a drink, number 5. 2 strikes. Carol's turn. She stepped up to the podium, but instead of answering, she did something no contestant had ever done. She opened Robert's notebook. The studio watched, confused, as Carol carefully turned to a page marked with a faded yellow sticky note. She ran her finger down until she found what she was looking for. Then she looked up at Steve and read, "Exercise." "Exercise," Steve repeated. "Show me exercise." Number 4 on the board, 8 points. Carol smiled and closed the notebook carefully. Second round. Name something you might forget to do before leaving the house. Carol opened the notebook again, found the page, read, "Turn off the lights." Number 2 answer. 17 points. Steve's eyes narrowed slightly. Lucky guess? Third round. Name a reason someone might be running late. Carol opened the notebook. Traffic, she read. Number 1 answer. 36 points. Now Steve was paying attention. So was everyone else. Fourth round. Name something people collect. Carol didn't hesitate. Opened the notebook. Stamps. Number 4. 11 points. By the 5th round, everyone was watching Carol more than the game board. Every time a question was asked, every eye turned to watch this widow open that worn notebook and read an answer written years ago by a man who was now dead. Question: name something that gets better with age. Carol's hands trembled as she opened the notebook. She found the page, but this time she paused. Her finger rested on Robert's handwriting. When she read the answer, her voice cracked. Marriage. The audience gasped softly, not because of the answer, but because of the weight. A widow reading her dead husband's answer about marriage getting better with age. Marriage, Steve repeated quietly. The game show energy was gone. Show me marriage. Number 3 answer. 14 points. Carol closed the notebook and wiped her eyes. Her daughter Maria put an arm around her shoulders. Steve Harvey set his cards down and walked away from his podium. He approached Carol directly. The game paused. The music stopped. Carol, Steve said gently, I need to ask you something. Where are those answers coming from? The moment everyone understood, Carol looked at Steve Harvey with tears streaming down her face. She held up the notebook, hands shaking. My husband Robert watched Family Feud every single night for 42 years, she said, voice breaking. Starting in 1976, he never missed an episode. For 35 of those years, he kept notebooks. He'd write down questions and predict answers before contestants gave theirs. He scored himself 7 notebooks full of predictions. The studio was completely silent. Robert was supposed to be here today, Carol continued. He got accepted. We were supposed to play together, but he died 3 months ago from cancer, 3 weeks before our taping date. Steve's eyes filled with tears. The audience was openly crying. Before he died, he made me promise to come anyway. He told me to bring his notebook from 2012. When you started hosting, he said his best predictions were in there. He wanted to play with me one more time. Carol opened the notebook and showed Steve pages filled with Robert's neat handwriting. Questions, answers, scores, little notes and margins. So that's what I'm doing, Carol said. I'm not answering these questions. Robert is. Every answer I've given you is what Robert wrote in this notebook 5 years ago, watching your show from our couch. And they're on the board, Steve. His answers are on the board. He's playing with me, just like he promised. Steve Harvey stood speechless. He reached out and gently took the notebook. He looked at the pages, questions from 2012 episodes. Robert's predicted answers in blue ink, scores tallied. Little notes. Got this one. Survey says I'm wrong. Steve's reaction was hilarious. Steve looked up at Carol, then at the cameras, then at the producers. And then Steve Harvey made a decision that broke every game show rule. Stop the game, he said firmly. We're stopping everything right now. When love becomes the game, the producers cleared the stage. Both family teams went backstage. The Martinez family stayed at their podium, and Steve Harvey, holding Robert's notebook like a sacred text, stood in the middle of the Family Feud stage and did something unprecedented. He started reading Robert's notes aloud. March 2012, Steve read. Question, name something you'd hate to run out of. Robert's answer, time with Carol. That's not even a valid answer, Robert, but I understand why you wrote it. The audience laughed through their tears. Steve flipped pages. September 2012. Question, name the most important quality in a spouse. Robert's answer, she laughs at my jokes. Carol, did you laugh at his jokes? Carol smiled through tears. Every single one, even the terrible ones. October 2012. Question, name something you'd save if your house was on fire. Robert's answer, Carol and my notebooks. In that order. But then Steve found a page that wasn't about Family Feud. It was tucked in the middle, written in the same blue ink, but clearly added later. The handwriting was shakier. Steve's voice changed when he read it. Carol, if you're reading this page, it means I'm gone and you kept your promise. You're standing on that Family Feud stage right now, probably nervous, probably crying, definitely missing me. I need you to know something. These 42 years with you were my winning streak. Every single day, you were the #1 answer to every question that mattered. I love you, I'll be watching, and I'm so proud of you for being here. Now let's win this thing together. Love, Robert. There wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Camera operators were crying. Producers were crying. Both families were crying. And Steve Harvey stood in the middle of the stage, holding a dead man's love letter to his wife, openly weeping. Carol collapsed into her daughter's arms. Her sister held her from the other side. Her son David stood behind with hands on her shoulders. Little Robert Jr., the grandson who'd never really known his grandfather, understood for the first time what love looked like after 42 years. Carol nodded, holding the notebook to her chest. We're going to finish this game, Steve said. But we're changing the rules. You're going to keep using Robert's answers, and win or lose, you're taking home that $20,000. Because that's what Robert would want, and because some moments are bigger than game shows. The ending that wasn't really an ending. They finished the game. Carol continued opening Robert's notebook, reading his predictions, watching as answer after answer appeared on the board. Not every answer was there. Robert hadn't been perfect, but enough answers hit that it felt like more than coincidence. By the end, the Martinez family had won $23,000. But the money didn't matter. Everyone understood they'd witnessed something that transcended television. After cameras stopped, Steve asked Carol if he could keep one page from Robert's notebook. Just one page. Carol agreed. Steve carefully removed a random page from June 2012 with Robert's predictions and little notes and margins. Steve had that page framed. It hangs in his office at the Family Feud studios. Below it, a plaque reads, Robert Martinez, 1948 to 2017. He played the game for 42 years, and even death couldn't stop his winning streak. The episode aired 4 months later as a 1-hour special titled, Love Never Ends. It became the second highest rated episode in the show's history. But more than ratings, it became something people shared, something people sent to their spouses, something that reminded everyone what marriage could look like after 42 years. Carol took the $23,000 and donated $15,000 to pancreatic cancer research in Robert's name. She used $5,000 to take her entire family on a vacation to Disney World, and she used $3,000 to buy a beautiful wooden display case for Robert's 7 notebooks. The notebooks now sit in Carol's living room, in that custom case, with a small brass plaque, Robert Martinez Family Feud, Champion 1976 to 2017. The legacy of showing up. Carol Martinez is 75 years old now. She still lives in the same house she shared with Robert. Her daughter lives 2 blocks away. Her son visits every Sunday. Little Robert Jr., now 27, stops by every Thursday to watch Family Feud with his grandmother, sitting in his grandfather's spot, learning what love looked like. Carol never remarried. I had 42 years with my person. Some people never get that. I'm not looking for a replacement. I'm celebrating what I had. She still watches Family Feud every night at 7 p.m. She sits in Robert's spot on the couch. She holds his notebook from 2012. And sometimes when Steve Harvey asks a question, Carol opens the notebook and checks what Robert predicted. She's never alone at 7 p.m. Robert is still there, still playing, still scoring himself, still making sure Carol knows that even death couldn't break their 42-year streak. Carol added an 8th notebook to the collection. This one is hers. Starting the day after Robert died, Carol began writing her own entries, not predictions, just daily notes to Robert, things she wanted to tell him, things she wished he could see, how much she still missed him at 7 p.m. I'm keeping our ritual alive, Carol says. He had his notebooks. Now I have mine. Someday our grandkids will have all 8 notebooks. They'll see what 42 years of showing up looks like. They'll see that love is a choice you make every single day. Steve Harvey still calls Carol every year on June 15th, the anniversary of her appearance. They talk about Robert, about the notebooks, about what it means to love someone so completely that even death becomes just another thing you do together. On what would have been Robert's 73rd birthday, Steve sent Carol a gift, a leather-bound notebook, identical to Robert's. Inside, Steve had written, "For Carol, your turn to make predictions. Robert's watching, and I bet he's scoring you. Love, Steve." Carol uses that notebook now. Every night at 7 p.m. she watches Family Feud and makes her predictions just like Robert did. She scores herself just like Robert did. And sometimes, when she gets an answer right, she writes in the margin, "Robert would have gotten this one too." Why this story matters. Carol and Robert Martinez's story isn't about a game show, it's about showing up. For 42 years, through job losses and health scares and family drama and financial stress and all the ordinary struggles of ordinary life, Robert and Carol Martinez showed up for each other at 7 p.m. That consistency built something death couldn't break. The notebooks weren't just Robert's obsession, they were his way of saying this matters. The relationship mattered, the time together mattered, the ritual mattered. In a world where relationships are often portrayed as grand gestures and dramatic moments, Carol and Robert remind us that real love is quieter. It's sitting on the same couch for 42 years. It's filling 7 notebooks with predictions nobody asked you to make. It's keeping a promise to a dying man even when it would be easier to let it go. It's showing up every day, at 7 p.m., for 42 years. Steve Harvey learned something from Carol and Robert that changed how he approaches relationships. People think love is the feeling, Steve says now, but Robert taught us that love is the showing up. He showed up for 42 years, and then, after he died, he showed up one more time through that notebook. That's not just love, that's devotion. That's what marriage looks like when 2 people build something together, one episode at a time. The notebook Carol brought to Family Feud sits in its case in her living room, open to the page where Robert wrote his final message. Visitors always ask to see it. Carol shows them willingly because she understands Robert's words aren't just for her. Every night at 7 p.m., Carol Martinez still watches Family Feud. She still sits in Robert's spot. She still opens his notebook, and she still writes in her own. Because love isn't about being together forever. Love is about showing up every single day for as long as you possibly can. And then if you're lucky enough and love deeply enough, you find a way to keep showing up even after you're gone. Robert Martinez figured out how to do that. 7 notebooks full of predictions, one final message to his wife. and 42 years of proof that the little rituals we build together become the foundation of a love that death itself cannot break. That's what Steve Harvey witnessed on the Family Feud stage in June 2017. Not just a widow reading her dead husband's answers, but visible proof that love, real love, the kind built over 42 years of 7 p.m. appointments, doesn't end when life does. It just finds new ways to show up.